For more on this story, we can bring in our French politics editor, Marc Perelman. Marc, good to see you. Why did it take so long for the government to come out denouncing this attack?
Well, there have been denunciations coming after the attack. However, they've come in different times and in different ways. First of all, it took quite some time for the obvious minister, the Interior Minister, Bruno Retailleau, to go and to speak about this issue. And some were criticizing him, including on the left, especially of the political aisle, saying if this was in a church or in a synagogue, you would have rushed immediately there. He said, I wanted to take the time to understand what was happening. And he also hinted that the motives of the killer are not that clear to that day. Yes, he said this was an act of anti-Muslim hatred, but there are possibilities from the recordings that were grabbed by the police that this person wanted to be a serial killer, quote unquote. So he said, we have to be careful, we have to condemn, but we have to investigate properly. Some are saying this is because Bruno Retailleau is taking a hard line against radical Islam and sometimes even Islam itself. And so this is why you also had different ways of condemning it. The Prime Minister, François Bayrou, said, this was an act of Islamophobia. Bruno Retailleau said, I'm not using Islamophobia. I'm using I'm describing this as an anti-Muslim act, because he said Islamophobia is a political statement. This means that you are essentially using politics rather than saying this is an anti-Muslim act, like you would have had an anti-Jewish or an anti-Christian act. But some are saying he's trying to downplay the crime by saying this is not about Islamophobia, and this is why you had a march purposely called by France Unbowed, the far-left party, saying this is a march against Islamophobia. We should name things as they are. So this is why, beyond the condemnation of the horrible crime that happened, there are clearly some political fights, and some with clear afterthoughts, because the Interior Minister is in a race to take the helm of the Conservative Party right now. There'll be a vote in a few weeks, so he's trying to find a balancing act between condemning this, but also he knows that a part of the voters want a hard line on radical Islam, so this is why he's been treading very, very carefully, too carefully according to the left.
Marc, talk us through the context which this murder took place in, because, of course, France is home to a sizable Muslim minority, but we've also seen an uptick in anti-Semitic attacks since October 7th.
Absolutely. The numbers, you look at the statistics of anti-Semitic attacks, have really skyrocketed. And everyone agrees on this. If you take the leader of the far left, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who was yesterday at the Paris meeting, and there were images of him actually crying when a Muslim woman told him about the abuses she was getting, that she was not feeling safe anymore. Jean-Luc Mélenchon said a few months ago that anti-Semitism was, quote unquote, residual in France, that it was, marginal and so on. So he was attacked for that, because all the figures are showing that anti-Semitic acts are really on the uptick and quite dramatically so. But for Jean-Luc Mélenchon, this is a way also to say there's a double standard, that, there's vivid condemnation of anti-Semitism by all the political aisle, but when it comes to Muslim, there's a kind of double standards. And some Muslims are indeed feeling that the condemnations are not swift enough, are not strong enough, and that they also feel that Jews are more protected than Muslims in France. This might obviously, there's only maybe a minority feeling this way, but clearly there are tensions, because France has the largest Muslim and Jewish community in Western Europe. And if you add to this the geopolitical context, the Gaza war, first and foremost. This is why tensions are running high, and when there are tragic attacks on synagogues or as in a mosque, this is when you see really the tempers flaring. Let's hope the investigation really explains what happened, how it happened, and there can be means to prevent such horrendous crimes from happening in the future.
And we'll see when this the alleged suspect gets brought back to France. Thank you very much for that, Marc Perelman.